Welcome to another episode of the Ohio College Tech Prep Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cola, and I'm the Tech Prep Coordinator from Kent State University out of the Northeast Ohio Tech Prep region. Several of our next few episodes will focus on working with special populations of student as defined by Perkins V. At the secondary level, those populations are students from economically disadvantaged families, students preparing for non-traditional fields, English learners, students experiencing homelessness, youth who are in or have aged out of the foster care system, youth with a parent in the armed forces and on active duty, single parents, including single pregnant women, and students with disabilities. At the post-secondary level, all of these populations are the same and include an additional special population, which is out-of-workforce individuals. This month, however, our specific focus will be on working with students with disabilities, specifically students with disabilities in career technical education. This month, I'm thrilled to be joined by Harleigh Hodge from Ashtabula County Technical and Career Center, or ATEC, which is one of 12 institutions that was awarded an equity for each competitive grant. This grant exists to promote promising practices for improving equity for special populations. Thanks so much for joining me today, Harleigh. Can you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about your job and what you do at ATEC.
Sure. My name is Harleigh Hodge. I started at ATEC in 2009 as an information technology career tech instructor. In 2022, I stepped into administration as ATEC's secondary administrator. I supervise career tech instructors, student services, which include school counselors, special education, and third-party agencies like counselors and Access. And then I also am the district testing coordinator, and I lead Perkins V.
In the interest of level setting for all of our listeners, can you please define what the special population, students with disabilities, means in terms of the conversation we're about to have, and also how a student qualifies to be a student with disabilities?
Individuals or students with disabilities means that the student is attending school with an IEP or individual education plan. And how a student becomes qualified or eligible is the student has a disability that affects their ability to learn or access education.
Can you provide some examples of what some of those disabilities might be?
So some examples may be if there's some type of breaks or need to go to the clinic throughout the school day, a student will have potentially an individual education plan. Another would be a student that has autism or might be hearing impaired, deaf, blind, anything that is going to affect their ability to learn and access education at school.
Great, thank you. So, speaking on students with disabilities, how do you recruit these students for CTE programs?
So students with disabilities and gen ed students are actually recruited the same way. So there are a few different opportunities throughout the school year. We have 3 selected days that happen in November, and all students in the county of Ashtabula are welcome to campus from their partner schools or their home schools, depending on how you prefer to address the school that the student is attending from. And those days are divided up amongst the 7 districts in the county. I should say 8. We have 1 private school. So really, there isn't a difference in how students are recruited seeing ATEC for the first time. We also have a parent night where in December after school, families are more than welcome to come out and attend and view different programs at leisure. And then we also will have parent-teacher conference in the spring is another opportunity if there are any families that are interested in the evening to come out and visit ATEC.
Great, thank you. So in general, how do you think is the best way to serve and support these individuals? And how might that differ from serving students who don't have disabilities, if at all?
I'm glad you're asking me this question. We are one of the 12 schools in the whole state of Ohio that were awarded the equity for each grant, but we also have an additional grant that we're working on, and I'd like to talk about both of those together. Mm-hmm. We also have the State Systemic Improvement Plan, or SSIP, and it also has another name, Each Child on Track. So working with those 2 grants have given us an opportunity to open up and to have a line of communication in some areas that we didn't really know were accessible and actually beneficial for us. So with the grant money and the grant opportunities, when we have students on campus that have disabilities, we need more staff members, more intervention specialists, and we also need to have spaces created where specially designed instruction can happen. So that was one grant area of being able to have more staff members on campus, and the equity for each grant allowed us to create that opportunity. And having that group of new staff members in the area on campus that makes sense to serve them. The key component when we have students with disabilities on campus with us is that relationship, the communication with the partner school. So before this call, we were working on one of our meetings with our partner school that's helping us with the Each Child on Track grant. And what we were doing is we were taking steps through the process of when one of their students decides, or when the team decides that that student is going to attend ATEC as a career tech student, what steps are in place now and what would we like to see? And one of the nice things that it has opened our eyes up to is that we felt like we were communicating really nicely, but there were some key components. And so that transition meeting, when the student is having the idea, or maybe the team thinks, that a career center is important for the student and their graduation pathway, having dialogue and communication is important. And then again, what we're identifying in this process is when that student is at senior or in their last year of school, going into the workforce, those transitions are so critical with the communication, not only with us here on staff, but with that partner school, and making sure that really we're communicating at the right time, the right information, and making sure that that student is on track. So that component, I think, is really unique where we're taking that approach. So if you had asked me a year ago, I would focus in on training career tech instructors and academic teachers and instructors on how the IEP works. So how to read the IEP, understand it, and also implement it for instructors to have that plan and that student supported in their classrooms.
So I think you pretty well answered my next question. However, I'm going to ask anyway in case there's anything you want to add. So can you tell me about some support strategies that ATEC uses when working with students with disabilities?
So one of the areas that we've identified within our students is helping them prepare for web exams and making sure that the student is on track when it's time to take that web exam, and giving them the supports. We have a student success center here. So students have the ability to come in 4th, 5th, and 6th period, which is usually their study hall or lunchtime, but also making accessible to the students an intervention specialist during their lab time to maybe work on some of the areas, vocabulary, concepts that as they're preparing for web exam, or as they're preparing just for concepts in general, but really helping that student feel prepared for a web exam and competencies just in the classroom. And then I also think it's important to celebrate students with disabilities. They're still participating in Skills USA or maybe one of the other career tech student organizations or CTSOs, and just maybe helping them along the way with preparing for contests as well. I would also say that frequently checking in with students. Here in the Student Services office, we're right off of the cafeteria. Again, placement, making sure that we're easily accessible to our students that we serve, and making sure that some students, they like to come in and check in with their special ed coordinator or their school counselor or their intervention specialist more frequently, and making sure that some small conversations or maybe some small guidance that might be needed throughout the day, that our staff is available that at a time that works for that student.
Although the podcast is going to focus on different special populations in later months, are there any other special populations that you'd like to touch on that ATEC is supporting?
I would. So when we talk about special populations as a whole, Youth Opportunities, or YO, is a great resource. I know here on our campus, they're here just in another building, and they have a nice working relationship with our students, but they're also serving the whole county. And for each Youth Opportunity personal growth advisor that meets with students, when they go through that process of onboarding, there is a interview, there's an application. And so really Youth Opportunities, or YO, has an opportunity to individually support a student in their needs as they're moving through their time here at ATEC, or if they're back in their partner schools and they serve the whole county. And it can be support with transportation. It could be resume building. It could be funding a variety of needs that student has. And with that, I would also put in, and this is for all students, but there's another opportunity for the GRIT program here, which is because we're in Appalachia, however you'd like to say that, we have an opportunity to serve students in the county or the community, and that would be including that special population where, again, it's very similar. A interview and a survey is taken, and based on that student or that community member's needs, there are a variety of options, and that student or person from the community would meet with a job coach and go through the process of selecting the best pathway for that student to overcome their barriers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask you the same question that I ask everyone to wrap up our podcast episode. Is there anything else you would like to talk about, either when it comes to working with students with disabilities or ATEC in general, before we wrap up?
I would. I think the work that I do today, I truly appreciate the impact that I have for all students. And career tech education is probably one of the most accessible or available form of experience that students can have to help them determine when they're at a younger age on if a career is a good fit for that student, and offer not only the ability to view it in a book, but to experience it in the classroom, in a competition in Skills USA or for BPA or any of the other student organizations for career tech. And I also think that the student gets the opportunity to work with teachers that are from industry, so they have that experience and knowledge that they can share with the students. So I feel that students who participate in career tech, whether they stay in that industry or not, there are some key values that student has had the opportunity to practice at a young age. And I always see that supports them in whatever career field that they end up landing into. But yet there are some soft skills, professional skills, and again, the experience that they have gained at a high school age that seems to carry them into a young adult, that I truly value the time that we spend with students here at ATEC.
I completely agree with that. Thanks so much for joining me, Harleigh. I have really appreciated having you here today. And thanks also to all of our listeners for tuning in another month with us. Join us next month, and if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to leave us a rating or a review on whatever podcast service of choice you listen to.